So in the lesson today, we're going to go over solving quadratics by completing the square. And this is something that you guys were taught in Algebra 1 and also used it in geometry last year. So the first thing I want to do is calculate x plus 4 squared. So we're going to use the box method to do this initially. So I'm going to put my x here, my 4, and an x and a 4, and I'm going to draw a box. Recalling that x times x is x squared. And 4 times x is 4x, and x times 4 is 4x, and 4 times 4 is 16. So notice here we have x squared, and then we have two 4x's. So I'm just going to put that there because it's going to help you guys understand what we're doing later. And then plus 16. So this is actually x squared plus 8x plus 16. And notice that that was 2 times the 4x. So when we factor this over here, we're going to use, again, our box method. Really, we call it, the reverse box method. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create my box, and I'm going to put my first term in the top left box, my last term in my bottom right box. And then we're thinking about what two factors give us 9x squared, right? That's what we want to know. What two factors give us 9x squared and that add up to be 6, okay? So that's 3x plus 3x, right? So that's the two terms we're going to put here, 3x and 3x. So we're looking at GCFs. So what is the greatest common factor of x squared here and 3x? That would be x, right? And what is the GCF of x squared and 3x? Again, this is x. What is the greatest common factor of 3x and 9? That would be 3 and 3. So notice we get x plus 3 and x plus 3, which we know is what? X plus 3 squared, right? Okay, so now hopefully you see again that we have these two terms right here that are the same. Do y'all notice that? Okay, so when we're actually factoring, we can actually take a shortcut. So if we see that this first term and this last term are perfect squares, then what we can attempt to see is we can take half of the middle term, this coefficient right here, we can take negative 10 and we can divide it by 2. That gives us negative 5. And then if you notice over here, when we had 2 times the 4x, that would be like 2 times negative 5x, right? So yes, that would be negative 10. So if we drop our first term, that's x, and we subtract the negative 10 divided by 2, that's negative 5. So that means that this term is x minus 5 squared, okay? So once again, we just take the middle term, we divide it by 2, that gives us negative 5, right? And that's what we put right there, okay? So what pattern do you notice about, well, hold on just a second, yeah. What pattern do you notice about the middle term b and the last term c related to the last term used in the factored form? So I noticed that the middle term is half of b, and I also noticed that the last term was b squared. That's what was equal to c, right? So to complete the square, we're going to basically take 1/2 of b, and then we're going to square it, right? So we're going to do, we could do it this way, b divided by 2, because that's still half of b, right? Squared. That's what we're going to do, okay? To find the last term. So it says create a perfect square trinomial and write it as a binomial squared. So what we're going to take is half of this middle term, the coefficient 14 divided by 2, that's 7, right? So then we're going to square that 7 squared, that equals 49. That's what completes this perfect square trinomial, okay? Now also, this number right here that we got, 7, we're going to bring it down here, and we're going to put it in our parentheses squared. So this term right here, x squared plus 14x plus 49, is equal to x plus 7 squared. How do I know that? Because again, I can do x squared plus 7 times x, that's 7x, times 2 times 7x, right? And then I can square the last term, that would be 49, right? So that's going to be x squared plus 14x plus 49, which is the term we got up at the top. All right, so now let's do this again, and we're going to just do some practice. So we're going to take the negative 4 divided by 2. That gives us negative 2. And we can bring that right down here into this set of parentheses, right? Then we're going to take that negative 2, and we're going to square it. So that's going to give us 4. So that's what we put back up here in that blank. Okay? Again, we're going to take 5 and divide it by 2. That's going to be our x plus 5 over 2. Then we're going to take 5 over 2, and we're going to square it, which means we're going to square the 5 and the 2. So this is going to be 25 over 4. So this is 25 over 4. Last one, we're going to take our 20 divided by 2. That's going to give us 10. Again, that's what goes down here, x plus 10 squared. And then we're going to take that 10 and we're going to square it. That's what we're going to put back up in our blanks. That's going to be 100. All right, so now we're going to do a couple examples together. So now we're going to use the process that I just showed you guys to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So we're going to do a couple other things, so just really pay attention. So we got x squared plus 8x. And when I do this, I'm going to create a blank, and then I'm always going to move this to the other side of the equal sign. So to do that, I'm going to add 20, so that's going to be equal to 20. And then I'm going to add a blank over here. So now we're still going to take our 8, and we're going to divide it by 2. That's going to give us 4. And so down here, we've got our x plus 4 squared. Now we're going to take our 4, and we're going to square it. That's going to give us 16. So that 16 we're putting up here in this blank. Y'all see that? So now that gives us over here on the right side of the equal sign, 20 plus 16, that is 36, right? Now what we're going to do is take the square root of both sides. So that's going to give us x plus 4 equals, what's the square root of 36? Yes, 6. So this is going to be plus or minus 6. So that means x is going to be equal to, subtract that 4 from both sides. So then we're going to add 6 and we're going to subtract 6 from negative 4. So negative 4 plus 6 would be x equals 2, right? And then we also got negative 4 minus 6, so x would also be equal to negative 10, okay? All right, now let's work this other one over here. So now we're going to, again, do x squared minus 10x plus blank, and we're going to, again, move this over here, so it's going to be subtracted, so it's going to be minus 21, again, plus a blank. So make sure you add these blanks, and some of y'all might want to skip the step of blanks, but I would suggest you don't, because this is what's going to help you remember that you got to fill those, okay? So once again, we're going to take our negative 10, and we're going to divide it by 2. That's going to be negative 5. So it's going to be x minus 5 down here squared. Remember, this is the term that goes down here, okay? And then we're going to take that negative 5 and we're going to square it. Now remember, any term squared is a positive term. So this is going to be plus 25 and plus 25. So this gives us x minus 5 squared, and negative 21 plus 25 would be a positive 4, right? So that's equal to 4. Once again, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So this is going to be x minus 5 equals, the square root of 4 is 2, so this is plus or minus 2. So this is going to be, we're going to add the 5 to both sides, so that's going to be 5 plus 2, which is 7, and 5 minus 2, which is 3. So those are our values for x. Okay? All right, so let's do another one. So this time I notice immediately that all of these terms are divisible by 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. Okay, so notice all these terms are divisible by 2. So I'm going to do that first. Even 0 is divisible by 2. So that means we're basically factoring out that 2, guys. So that's going to give me x squared minus 8x. And I'm going to go ahead and create my blank right now. And remember, this is when I divide 2 into 22, that's going to be positive 11. I'm going to subtract that 11 from both sides. So this is going to be equal to negative 11 plus, again, my blank, okay? So now, again, we're going to do negative 8 divided by 2. That's going to give us negative 4. That's what we're putting down here in our parentheses. And then we're going to take that negative 4 and we're going to square it, keeping in mind that any term you square, a negative times a negative is positive. So this is still going to be a positive 16. So we're going to add the 16 to both sides. So that's negative 11 plus 16. That's going to be 5, right? Okay, so now once again, we're going to take square root of both sides. So that's going to give me x minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Then we're going to add the 4 to both sides. So x is going to be equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of 5. And yes, these are our two different answers. If you had to express them separately, you would do 4 plus the square root of 5 equals x, and x equals 4 minus the square root of 5. All right. Whoa, I don't know what happened there. That was very strange, y'all. Anyway, so let's go ahead and work this other one. Now, this example is different than what's in the notes because I wanted to show you one that has a different kind of solution. So I went ahead and changed it after we already printed it. So let's go ahead and work this one. So here again, we've got x squared minus 4x plus blank. We're going to move that 24 again by subtracting it. So that's negative 24 plus blank. So we're going to take our negative 4 and we're going to divide it by 2. That's going to give us negative 2. So that's what goes down here in the parentheses. Then we're going to take that negative 2 and we're going to square it. That equals 4. And that's what goes up here in these blanks, right? 4 and 4. So that's going to give us negative 24 plus 4. So that's going to be negative 20. So now we're going to take our square root again of both sides. Now this time this should look really familiar because now we have a negative underneath the radical, which means that when we factor this thing, which is what I'm going to do next, plus or minus the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, because those are, 4 is the perfect square factor of 20, right? So that's going to be x minus 2 equals plus or minus, this ends up being I and this ends up being 2, so it's going to be 2I square root of 5. Now we're going to add the 2 to both sides. So x is equal to 2 plus or minus 2I square root of 5. So once again, if we were to write our answers separately, it would be x equals 2 plus 2I square root of 5 and x equals 2 minus 2I square root of 5. Okay, so now I'd like you guys to try some of these on your own and come back to me when you're done. So here's our first one. Again, x squared plus 8x plus blank equals, adding the 84 to both sides, plus our blank again. So we're going to take the 8 divided by 2, that gives us 4. So we got x plus 4 down here squared. Then we're going to take our 4 and square it. That's going to give us 16. So we're going to take the 16 back up here. So that's going to give us 100 over here, right, y'all? Sorry. That's supposed to be a plus there. Y'all supposed to be an equal sign. So that's equal to 100. So now we are going to take our square root again of both sides. So that's going to be x plus 4 equals plus or minus 10. So that's x equals negative 4 plus 10, which is what? 6. And x equals negative 4 minus 10, which equals negative 14. Yeah, I think my thing's possessed down there, y'all. Keeps doing that every time I draw that straight line. All right, let's work the other one. Come back to me when you're done. Okay, so we got x squared minus 12x plus blank. We're going to add 8 to both sides. So that's going to give us 12 over here plus blank. So we're going to do our negative 12 divided by 2. That's going to give us negative 6. We're going to do this x minus 6 down here squared, right? And then we're going to take our negative 6 and we're going to square it. So that's going to give us 36 here. So that means we're going to put 36 here and 36 here. So 12 plus 36 is 48. So once again, we're going to take our square root of both sides. Notice I keep putting that plus or minus in front of there. Don't forget that, y'all. So that means x minus 6 equals, I'm going to go ahead and factor this, plus or minus. And we've seen 48 a bunch of times, so y'all should know by now that it's the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. So this is x minus 6 equals plus or minus 4 square root of 3. And we're going to add that 6 to both sides. So our final answer is going to be x is equal to 6 plus or minus 4 square root of 3. And often your answers will be written just like that with the plus or minus, okay? All right, let's do this one. Go ahead and work this one and pause the video and come back to me when you're done, okay? So we got x squared minus 8x plus blank. We're going to move that 39 by subtracting it from both sides, so that's going to actually give us a negative 44 plus blank. So once again, we're going to take our negative 8 divided by 2. That gives us negative 4. That's what we're putting down here in our set of parentheses. And then we're going to take that negative 4 and we're going to square it. That's going to give us 16. So we're going to put that 16 back up in our blanks. And when we do negative 44 plus 16, we get negative 28. So this is going to be equal to negative 28 here. So again, we're going to take our square root at both sides. Now notice this time we have a negative underneath the radical. So that's going to be plus or minus. I'm going to go ahead and factor this again. So that's going to be negative 1. And I know that the perfect square factor of 28 is 4 and times 7, right? So now we're going to simplify this. This is x minus 4 equals plus or minus. This is 2. That's I. So 2I square root of 7. So now we're actually going to add our 4 to both sides. So x is equal to 4 plus or minus 2I square root of 7, which is the way you will see your answers again, often written. So let's do this last one. Again, pause me, come back to me when you're done. All right, so this one is 7x squared plus 14x plus blank, and I'm going to move that 46 by adding it to both sides. So that's going to be negative 4 plus 46. So that's going to actually be a positive 42. Now, does everybody notice that we have all of these are a factor of 7? So we could actually get rid of that 7 by factoring it out, right? By dividing everything by 7. That's going to give us x squared plus 2x plus blank equals 6. And these numbers are a lot easier to deal with, right? So remember, we have to have a leading coefficient of 1 when we're doing this, okay? So somehow we got to work towards getting a leading coefficient of 1. All the rest of the problems we've done have had a leading coefficient of 1. That means that this value right here is 1. So we always want to get there, okay? So if it's not 1 and we want to use completing the square, we want to get it there by dividing by whatever that number is, okay? So now, again, we're going to take our 2 divided by 1. By 2. So that's 1. Take our 1 and square it. So this is going to be x plus 1 squared. And that's going to be 1. Remember, we should have put our blank over there. Guess I had a hiccup there. So we're going to add our 1 to both sides. So this is going to be 7. So once again, we're going to take our square root and our square root. So this is going to be x plus 1. And this is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. So then we're just going to subtract that 1. So x is equal to minus 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. All right, so these last 3 are review, okay? So I want to see if you guys can factor the first 2 and simplify the last one. All right, so hopefully you've done this and come back to me. So do you notice that there's a GCF of both of these of 3? So that gives me 9x squared minus 16. Well, hopefully you guys notice that both 9 and 16 are perfect squares, as well as x squared. So we're going to take square root of this, which is what? 3x and 3x, and we're going to take the square root of this, which is 4 and 4, and we're going to put our plus and our minus here. When there's no middle term and we have 2 perfect squares, that's what we call the difference of squares, and this pattern is always going to apply. So wow, this looks like the same problem over here, but what do you guys notice? Yes, it's got a plus sign. So we are going to factor out the 3 again. That's going to give us 9x squared plus 16. So again, when we notice that these are both perfect squares, right, we're going to take square root of both of these. So this is going to be 3. Again, 3x and 3x. But this time, because there's a plus right here, guys, we know that we're not just going to take square root of 4 or 16, which is 4, but it's going to be 4i and 4i. So once again, we're going to put our plus and our minus here. So the I is there because there's a plus sign there. And that's because when we multiply negative or 4i times negative 4i, that's negative 16i squared. And the I squared becomes negative 1. And negative 16 times negative 1 is positive 16. Okay. So, all right. So now down here, we're going to go ahead and simplify this because we cannot have an imaginary number in the denominator. So on this one, what is the conjugate of negative 7i? It's positive 7i, right? So when we do this problem, it's going to be 35i over negative 49i squared. And a lot of y'all missed this on the test. So once again, we're going to change this to a negative 1, right? So this is going to be 35i over what? A positive 49, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And many of y'all did. I don't think you guys even did this problem. I think you just assumed because the denominator started out negative, it was going to stay that way. So this is going to end up being 5i over 7. So 5 7's I. Okay?